He's a little bit of a character, and we are going to enjoy him this evening. Mr. McCourt had been introduced to the Friendly Sons by one of our own, Ray Lenedy. Ray recounts how he and Alfie met in Manhattan at, of all places, a bar. When he was introduced to Alfie by a mutual friend, Ray exclaimed how he had read Alfie's book and enjoyed it immensely. Well, understandably, that turned into an instant friendship, which turned into a long evening, to the point Ray found himself without a means to return to his hotel. Alfie immediately came to the rescue and drove Ray back to his accommodations. They have since become great friends. Gentlemen, please welcome Alfie McCourt.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Joe, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Ray Lenedy, for introducing me to the Friendly Sons. And for Chris Kelly for inviting me here, to all the Kelly family who have made me very, very welcome here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm sitting on a dais here with a very distinguished group, so I won't attempt to name everyone or to thank everyone. I'd be likely to omit someone, and I might not get out of here alive, you never know. So as Joe explained, I met Ray in New York, and he introduced me to Chris, and here I am tonight. And my brother Frank wrote a famous book, Angela's Ashes, and won the Pulitzer Prize. And he was invited here, I understand, a number of years ago. But he went to the White House instead, so you were snubbed for the White House. And Brother Malachi is well known, character, personality, actor. He's been on in a million movies, on the radio, on Broadway and everything else, and he could not make it down here tonight, so I'm here. My brother Mike lived in San Francisco, and he was a great friend of the mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown, and Mike was kind of an unofficial mayor of San Francisco, but then he died last year, so he's not here. He's not here. So here I is. And now I think I'm going to cry. Well, Ray Lenedy told me that I should be very serious tonight. No, he said I had been advised not to be serious. I once was asked to introduce at a breakfast gathering in Manhattan. I was asked to introduce the author of a book on schizophrenia. Apparently, we Irish have a big strain of schizophrenia. I attributed it to our centuries of having to deal with England and to deal with Rome. And I probably offend some people by saying that, but it's the truth. I think we were torn between England and Rome. We never could make up our minds in which direction we should go. Like the Irishman used to join the British Army and take the English shilling, as they say, send it home to his mother or his wife, and then she would send it off to Rome. So the whole I never understood it. But anyway, I was introducing this man who wrote a book on schizophrenia. We do seriously have a strong strain of schizophrenia, and we also suffer from the celiac disease, the wheat intolerance. My brother Frank once suggested to me that I should do some research into the connection between schizophrenia and celiac disease, but I didn't have time, so I had to let it go, maybe in my next life. But I had to introduce this man. He had a tragedy in his family. So many of his family suffered from schizophrenia, and it was a breakfast thing, and people were very serious. There were other people involved in the field of mental illness. And I really didn't know what to say. I got up anyway, and I began by saying, there is no humor in mental illness. And I stopped, and everybody laughed. So, you never know. I guess the room was full of schizophrenics. I was the chief. The ringleader. Anyway, Ray Linda did tell me that if any lost or errant Republicans ever wander in here, they're kept in a separate room. But he said on special occasions they're trotted out and allowed to sit in the main in the main assembly hall in order to head off any kind of litigation, whether it be civil rights or otherwise. So there are probably some Republicans in here tonight. So you should probably look to your right or look to your left, and there will be a prize for the person who identifies the most lost Republicans. And then Chris, on another note, was telling me that they sometimes have a Protestant wander in here, even worse, maybe a Presbyterian. But they're shunted off into another room and only allowed in once in a while. I have to tell you that in our family a few years ago we discovered, I don't know if I should tell you this, we did discover that we have a Presbyterian in our lineage. I think our great-grandmother was a Presbyterian. So now I've told it, we're outed. But I've been thinking for some years that St. Patrick came to Ireland and he brought Christianity to Ireland. He didn't bring Catholicism, and obviously he didn't bring Protestantism because it didn't exist at the time. But he did bring Christianity, and I've always felt it a shame that we have St. Patrick's Day, we have the 12th of July, and that on no occasion can we ever march under the banner of St. Patrick. I realise also that there's an impediment to that, that the Presbyterians are unlikely to march up Fifth Avenue and kiss the ring of the cardinal. We'll have to find a way around that. But George Mitchell was quoted in the paper yesterday as saying that the situation in Northern Ireland is okay, that they're making progress, but it's very slow progress, and that to get the two sides together and to trust each other. So thinking since President Clinton really initiated the whole thing by getting George Mitchell to go over there and allowing the leader of the IRA to come over here, that President Clinton, so I was wondering if it's possible for what the politicians like to call, they love the word, it's a precious word, a new initiative. They're always coming up with new initiatives. So maybe there could be an initiative from this side of the ocean to reconcile the two sides over there. The thing is, I'm leaving town tomorrow, so I won't be held responsible for any of this. But anyway, there's the old Northern Ireland joke on the same note. The old Northern Ireland joke says, are you a Catholic or are you a Protestant? I am a Buddhist. Well then, are you a Catholic Buddhist or a Protestant Buddhist? But then again, up in Woodstock, New York, there's a quote from Napoleon that I like, that I saw up in Woodstock, New York. It says that religion is what keeps the poor from murdering the rich. I think there's always some truth in that. Again, I'm leaving tomorrow, so. But then again, also in Woodstock, New York, outside a restaurant, there was a sign that said, tofu-free mozzarella, and that really struck me. I had no idea that there was tofu in mozzarella. I think it's probably a national disgrace. But tofu used to be the cure-all for everything. Eat tofu, substitute for meat, substitute for chicken, and probably contains a cure for athlete's foot. But nowadays tofu is out, so we have tofu-free mozzarella. But then again, I thought, well, if you can have tofu in mozzarella and the Italians will put up with it, maybe we can get the Protestants and the Catholics together. Well, anyway, that afternoon I was going around chanting, who knew, mozzarella with tofu. Who knew, mozzarella with tofu, till my wife would say, will you please shut up? But also on the same, I keep harping on this Presbyterian business, but in 1798, the Catholics and the Presbyterians did get together and rise up, Catholics and Presbyterians and dissidents. The rebellion, of course, was a failure, they always are. But it ended up bitterly for both sides. And you know, the definition of Irish Alzheimer's is we forget everything but the grudge, right? But I think of Northern Ireland as kind of a template for world peace, because if we can fix this, if we can really fix it in depth, we could maybe do something everywhere. I think most religions have love at their core, but somehow or other there comes a kind of religious ideology and we forget about the love. But I'm coming to the end now. Thank God to see. There are two themes tonight. One is St. Patrick, and which we have dutifully acknowledged. And the other is the centennial, the 100th anniversary of the Rising of 1916. There are about 8 million books being written about it, tons of movies and documentaries and poets and everything else. But I thought I might finish with a song, Skibbereen, which is a song of the Great Hunger, which was kind of a, because at the end of the Great Hunger, so many Irishmen came to New York, and the Rising of 1916 was planned and funded essentially from New York, from the United States. The Skibbereen. Oh, Father dear, I oft times hear you speak of Erin's Isle. Her lofty peaks, her valleys green, her mountains rude and wide. You say it is a lovely land, wherein a prince might dwell. Then why did you abandon it? The reason to me tell. Oh, son, I loved my native land with energy and pride, till a blight came over all the land, my sheep and cattle died. My rent and taxes were too great, I could not them redeem, and that's the cruel reason why I left old Skibbereen. And you were only 2 years old, and feeble was your frame. I could not leave you with my friends, you bore your father's name. So I wrapped you in my coat o' moor, in the dead of night unseen. I heaved a sigh and bade goodbye to dear old Skibbereen. Oh, Father dear, the day will come when vengeance will be mine, when Irishmen with feeling stern will rally one and all. I'll be the man to lead the van beneath the flag of green, and loud and high we'll raise the cry, revenge for Skibbereen. Thank you all. You've been
It's always nice to have a brogue in the program. Thank you for your clever stories and Irish wit. It was very nicely done, Alfie. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce our chief clerical speaker for the evening, Father Richard Malloy. Father Malloy is the Jesuit chaplain of our own University of Scranton. He may not be a native of Scranton, but as you will soon learn, he certainly knows how to speak our native tongue, that of quick-witted humor. Perhaps part of this is because he's a Jesuit. A little bit about him and his impressive background. He's a native of Philadelphia. All of us upstaters deem him to be an imported talent. With good reason. He holds academic degrees from St. Louis University, Weston School of Theology, and his doctorate in cultural anthropology from Temple University. He has written best-selling books and has had several articles in noteworthy publications. Last night he also told me a little bit more about the rest of his life. He taught at St. Joe's. For 15 years he worked with the impoverished in Camden, New Jersey. He worked with challenging issues associated with urban hungers, poverty, and immigration. In addition to teaching at St. Joe's, he told me he played rugby and even got to play for the Philadelphia Eagles. My fellow friendly sons, how fortunate we are to have this gifted order, true spiritual guide, with us here on the Feast of St. Patrick, our patron. Please join me now in offering warm, heartfelt welcome to the chaplain of the University of Scranton, the Reverend Richard Malloy, the Society of Jesus.
Your Excellency, Bishop Bambera, other members of the clergy, distinguished guests, members of the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick of Lackawanna County, good evening. Good evening. I'm already up here under false pretenses. The Philadelphia Eagles deal was that I was 10 years old and it was halftime down at Franklin Field. Tonight I feel a little bit like McGillicuddy. McGillicuddy worked at the Guinness factory in County Offaly, the heavenly land that also gave us Tullamore Dew, the true nectar of the gods. From the foreman's office far above the plant floor, he sees McGillicuddy floating face down in vat 17. The alarms scream, all the machines stop. It seems he is drowned. A hush falls over the brewery. The men rush to climb the 30-foot ladders up to the top of vat 17. And to their great relief, they see McGillicuddy turn over and begin to float on his back. And he takes a drink and another drink. And as he's floating there and drinking there, they realize he is praying. He is praying. And he says, "Oh Lord, give me a mouth worthy of this occasion." You know, after Mr. McCourt, I'm going to need that. Prayer, yes, prayer. It's the only way an Irishman can converse with an equal. Friends, it's a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you this evening. An unmerited and undeserved privilege. In other years, you have had accomplished and worthy clerical speakers, wonderful bishops, priests who ran large parishes and organizations like Catholic Social Services, like our own Monsignor Joe Kelly, Jesuits who had universities and high schools, well-known superlative speakers like Monsignor Joe Quinn and Monsignor Andrew McGowan. This year you're stuck with me. Tonight you got like a Philadelphia Phillies 76ers kind of speaker. Maybe next year you'll get a heavy hitter, but tonight you should get $10 back on your ticket. I mean, Monsignor McGowan was as funny as Groucho Marx. You know, Groucho Marx was on an elevator once, and a real pompous priest gets on the elevator and goes, "Mr. Marx, I would just like you to know that I am fully aware of all the joy and laughter you have brought into the lives of millions." And Groucho looks at me and goes, "Thanks, Padre. I wish I could say the same for you guys." I know my role here. Be interesting, be brief, be gone. I promise you 2 out of 3. As for brevity, if last year's speaker, Joe Biden, is the measure, I can be up here for an hour and be considered short. And someone floated the rumor that Hillary's husband was going to be here. That guy can talk till dawn. Thank God that didn't happen. So we're very happy to have Mr. O'Malley and Mr. O'Court here tonight. And I got to tell you, I have to behave myself here tonight. Bishop Bambera, Father Keller, Father Quinn are all here. They are three of my bosses. I have as many bosses here as Donald Trump has wives. Some jokes didn't make it past the Jesuit censors. You know what they say? The boss may not always be right, but he's always the boss. Or she's always the boss. But we'll get to the subject of marriage in a moment. And if you see Bishop Bambera texting during this talk, he's probably contacting the Jesuit Provincial and getting me transferred to Alaska. Since 2011, I've had the pleasure of joining you for this august affair. Dr. Frank Homer's table in the back invites me to dine with them. It's a lot of crazy things happen back there. You've got to go back there one year. It's a lot of fun. Gentlemen, and having been back there the last few years, I use the term rather loosely. During my first year at the U, I heard about this thing. I was curious. I couldn't wait to get here. And I got here, I couldn't believe it. 1,200 men, all in tuxes, suits and ties, Roman collars, thick clouds of cigar smoke outside. I didn't know if I was in 2011 or 1961. And then the cases of beer begin to flow to the tables. How great is that? This whole thing is like a wedding or wake with 1,000 of my wild, crazy Irish uncles and cousins. The event also fit what I had been told about the area before I moved north from Philly. You want to be in Scranton at the end of the world because everything gets to Scranton 20 years later. In some ways, that's a good thing. Still, you're my kin. We are the Irish. We are Irish. We are all curious, crazy, and contradictory. And now we find out schizophrenic. How many of you are Republican? And how many are Democrat? And how many are both or neither, depending on the argument or the candidate? President Obama's people come from County Offaly, as do my ancestors. I keep waiting for the invite to the family reunion at the White House. And you know the difference between President Obama and God? God knows he's not Obama. Yes, we are the Irish. The great Bishop Fulton Sheen once noted, why we Irish fight so often among ourselves. That way we're assured of having a worthy opponent. Yes, we are the Irish, and you all know the proof that Jesus was Irish. He was 30 years old, he didn't have a job, and his mother thought he was God. Yes, we are the Irish. We doubt the existence of God, but we're absolutely certain of the infallibility of the Pope. I'm really surprised that the first Jesuit Pope is from Argentina of Italian descent. He seems so Irish. He always appears to be changing the rules while charming everyone. And you know what they're saying? He's the first Jesuit Pope and the last. They're never going to let this happen again. Like the Pope, I got a new assignment a few years. He got sent to Rome. I got sent to Scranton. I think I got the better deal. Certainly an easier job. I'm from Philadelphia, the city of brotherly shove. All the years I was in the Philly-Camden area, when I got the chance, I'd get up here to go fishing. Northeast Pennsylvania. It's our own little piece of heaven. They say there's a golden phone in the Vatican that's a direct line to heaven. But to use the phone, you have to pay $10,000. The exact same phone exists in the Chancery in Dublin, but it's a local call. But when that phone rings, it rings in St. Peter's Cathedral on Wyoming Avenue in Scranton. Of course, that means our own Bishop Bambera is like God. An opinion with which I wholeheartedly agree. See, we Jesuits do honor the hierarchy. Is he texting yet? Speaking of $10,000, if you're in the mood to be generous, there are Jesuits in the room. Yeah, that's right. Shake hands with a Jesuit, check your wallet. There was this Franciscan priest who went to get his hair cut, and the barber says, I never charge clergy. This is back in the day. So the next day, there's a nice basket of bread from the Franciscan bakery for the barber and his family. Benedictine monk goes in, gets his hair cut. How much? Never charge clergy. Next day, there's 2 nice bottles of wine from the Benedictine vineyards for the barber. Jesuit shows up, never charge clergy. Next day, the barber comes to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. There's 12 Jesuits lined up outside his barber shop. I'm not supposed to be hitting you up for money, but I am a Jesuit. I'm supposed to make some kind of point, give a little advice, a fervorino, an exhortation, calling us to be the men we deeply desire to be, the men our dogs think we are. The men God needs to make a world of peace and prosperity, faith and freedom, hope and healing, joy and justice, life and love. Since the Easter Rebellion of 1916, we Irish have overcome much. In the USA, we were looked down upon and despised. The great priest sociologist Andrew Greeley wrote, practically every accusation that has been made against American blacks, and today against Mexicans and immigrants, was made against the Irish. Our family life was inferior. We had no ambition. We did not keep up our homes. We drank too much. We were not responsible. We had no morals. It was not safe to walk through our neighborhoods at night. We were not capable of education. We voted the way crooked politicians told us to vote. Well, that one may have been true, at least in Philadelphia. They said we would always remain a social problem for the country. We have overcome. Yes, we have overcome. Today, we Irish, of all people, should be advocating building bridges, not walls. To build a good and loving society, I do have one serious suggestion for all of us to consider tonight. It's the same suggestion Pope Francis gave us when he spoke in Philadelphia last September. Jesus said, love one another. The Pope urges us to do so by fostering family life. We need good families, he says, to create and develop a society of truth, goodness, and beauty. Pope Francis knows it's not easy. He said, I know, families have difficulties. There are quarrels, and sometimes plates can fly, and children bring headaches. And the Pope continued, I won't even speak about mother-in-laws. Now, speaking about mother-in-laws, there was this guy who went on a big game hunt to Africa with his wife and his mother-in-law. So they're sitting around the campfire one night, and the wife realizes the mother-in-law is missing. She goes, we have to go find her. They go about a quarter mile, and there's this woman screaming, and there's this lion roaring. And the wife goes, you have to do something, you have to do something. The guy goes, I'm not doing anything. The lion got himself into this mess. Now, come on. Don't be too hard on your mother-in-law. She watches your kids, and she urges your wife to forgive you when you've been an idiot. As Han Solo said in Star Wars, women always figure out the truth. Always. Mother-in-laws, kids, wives, marriage is not easy. The woman marries a man expecting him to change, and then he doesn't. The man marries a woman expecting she won't change, but then she does. But hey, look at the bright side. You married guys don't need to remember your mistakes. There's no sense in two people remembering the same things. And a psychiatrist asks a lot of expensive questions, which your wife asks for free. The basic rule is there are only two things a man is allowed to say to his wife. Yes, dear, and I'm sorry. And all you Irish bachelors, get married. You shouldn't be so free and unencumbered in life. It's not fair. You should suffer like the rest of the guys. St. Paul preached, husbands, love your wives. It's right after that part about wives be obedient to your husbands, but that left the train station a long time ago. But seriously, we all know women save us. I learned this in the 5th grade. The sisters used to smack me a lot, but I always deserved it. But in 5th grade, we had this laywoman, and she was really mean and unfair. One day, she's yelling at me about something, and I knew, being American, that I had the right to remain silent. But I didn't have the ability. I told her to shut up. Dumb move, really dumb in a Catholic school in Philadelphia. You think I'd curse Jesus, the Virgin Mary, and the Pope. She starts swinging at me with the pointer. I go running. She catches me in the back door. She kicks me across the hall into the 4th grade. The kids in the 4th grade and the nun are looking like, what the heck's going on? She starts beating me with the pointer. I'm thinking, now at the hour of my death, now I understand the Hail Mary. All of a sudden, a little girl loudly screams, stop hitting him! It's my little sister, Maureen. Maureen saved me that day, at least until I got home, and got punished for being what the sisters called being a bold, brazen article. My little 5th grade revolt got me nowhere. But 100 years ago, in 1916, Brave men in Ireland gave their all in the Easter Rebellion. Today, the Irish no longer suffer under English tyranny. Things change. Revolutions happen, and some revolutions